Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really focusing on what makes SaaS businesses actually sustainable in the long run.
That's right. We're moving past just, getting new customers.
Yeah, away from the flashy funding news and more into the financial plumbing. Does the business model actually work?
Exactly. So our source material today, it's all about those strategic levers. We've got research on loyalty best practices, the whole spectrum of high-touch versus low-touch customer models.
And that critical metric, customer lifetime value or LTV.
The big one.
Right. So our mission for you today is really connecting these dots. Because look, in SaaS, the economics can be pretty brutal. If your customer acquisition cost, your CAC, is high, and then you lose that customer quickly,
Oof. Yeah.
you don't just lose future revenue, you've basically thrown away that big upfront investment you made to get them in the first place. So retention, it's not just nice to have.
No, it's fundamental. It's the difference between a business built on, shaky ground and one with predictable, solid, recurring revenue.
Okay, so let's start with the enemy. Churn. Customers leaving. The sources really stress differentiating why they leave. It matters.
Oh, absolutely. The solutions are totally different. So first, you've got voluntary churn.
That's the active choice. They're unhappy, found someone better.
Yeah, or just don't see the value anymore. That's a direct hit on your product, your service, a real challenge.
But then there's the other kind, the sneakier one.
Right, involuntary churn. This is the accidental stuff. An expired credit card, maybe a payment just fails, a billing mix-up.
Seems less personal.
It is less personal, but the sources hammer this home. You have to tackle it proactively. Think dunning systems, clear communication, because it bleeds revenue just as badly as someone actively quitting.
Got it. So that leads naturally into loyalty programs then.
Precisely. These aren't just fluff. They're structured ways to encourage the behavior. You actually want deeper engagement with the product, using more features, hopefully turning into advocates.
Hairy, it's sticky.
Exactly, making the relationship sticky, not just, transactional.
So we looked at a bunch of tactics, over a dozen actually. But the ones that really seem to work focus on that connection, right? The first big one seems to be intense personalization.
Yeah, you can't just blast everyone with the same email anymore. It doesn't work.
So what does work?
Deep segmentation. You group users maybe by industry or how they actually use your product, maybe even their job title. Then you use triggers.
Like behavioral triggers.
Yeah, like say a user tries out a key feature for the first time. Boom, send them a tailored offer or maybe a how-to guide right then. It feels like the system understands them.
Makes sense. Okay, but the sources also push tiered rewards and gamification, bronze, silver, gold levels, badges like power user leaderboards. I wonder, though, does that sometimes just encourage people to click around doing busy work instead of actually getting value? Is there a risk there?
That's the knife edge you walk, absolutely. Gamification tanks if the points and badges aren't tied to real valuable actions. Clicking buttons, no. But completing a project, integrating with another tool, that shows value. When you tie it to valuable outcomes, it taps into that basic human desire, for recognition, for status, setting up tiers based on how long they've subscribed or how deeply they've adopted features. You're using status to drive commitment.
So using status as a weapon against churn. Interesting. Another one I liked was milestone recognition. Seems simple.
It is simple but effective. Celebrating an anniversary, you've been with us a year, or hitting a usage goal, a quick personalized message, or maybe a small credit, it just reinforces that relationship, makes them feel seen.
And then the ultimate level, maybe, building a real community and feedback loop.
Yes, this is huge. You stop just selling to them and start co-creating with them. The sources suggest things like publicly thanking customers whose feedback led to a specific product improvement.
So they feel ownership.
Exactly. They become advocates because they feel invested, like they're part owners in the product's journey. Okay, so that's about keeping customers. Now, let's shift gears a bit. How do you actually engage with them? In SaaS, we talk about touch.
Right, touch. So that's basically how much human interaction is needed, right? For sales, onboarding, support.
Precisely. And it's a spectrum. On one end, you've got low touch. This is the heart of product-led growth, or PLG.
So minimal human contact. It relies heavily on automation, self-service, think AI chatbots, help articles, FAQs.
Yeah, the product essentially has to sell and support itself.
The big upside there is scalability, I assume. and lower costs.
Massive scalability, yeah.
Yeah.
And naturally, lower customer acquisition costs. If you don't need a salesperson for every single deal, your costs plummet.
And the proud example of low touch is freemium, isn't it?
Definitely. Offer a solid free version, and you just demolish the barrier to entry. The data we looked at shows freemium companies grow, on average, 17% faster.
Oh, 17%, but there's always a but.
There's always a but. Profitability hinges entirely on converting those free users to paying customers. Good freemium models, they typically convert somewhere in the 2-5% range.
2 to 5%, okay.
Yeah.
But the research had this really striking stat about free trials.
Oh, yeah, that was eye-opening.
So an opt-in trial, no credit card needed up front, converts around 18.2%, which sounds okay. But if you do an opt-out trial, where you must put in a credit card to start,
The conversion rate jumps to, what was it?
48.8%, almost half.
It's huge. That single step, asking for the card, it completely changes the user's mindset. It signals real intent.
Yeah.
Filters out the people just kicking the tires.
So it's adding friction, but it's calculated friction.
Exactly. You might get fewer signups overall, but the quality of those leads is way higher.
Okay, so that's low touch. What about the other end, high touch?
That's your traditional sales model. Think dedicated account execs, lots of demos, maybe a dedicated account manager after the sale. You usually need this for really complex products.
Like something needing deep integration, maybe with a company's big ERP system or something.
Precisely. Stuff that requires hand-holding.
Downside is cost, obviously, and longer sales cycles.
Definitely more expensive, takes longer, but the payoff can be much better retention because that personal support, higher customer satisfaction, and crucially, more chances to upsell or cross-sell other features or products.
Right. And the reality is, most companies aren't purely one or the other, are they?
Very few. Most end up hybridizing. They'll automate the easy stuff like initial onboarding for smaller clients, that's low-touch efficiency.
But they save the expensive humans.
Yeah, they save their customer success managers for proactive check-ins, deep support, but only for their big, high-value enterprise customers. That's high-touch effectiveness where it counts.
And that strategic choice, high versus low touch, or the mix that directly impacts your customer acquisition cost.
It's probably the single biggest driver of CAC, which leads us perfectly into our next bit.
Right, because how you engage high or low touch, that has to make sense with your price. Which brings us to probably the most common pricing approach, tiered pricing.
Yeah, tiered billing is pretty foundational in SaaS. You offer multiple plans. You often see basic, standard, premium, or maybe good, better, best. Fixed prices aimed at different types of customers.
And the tiers can be based on different things.
Sure. Could be features available, number of users allowed, or even usage volume, like how many emails you can send or API calls you make.
The advantage seems to be capturing a wider audience, right? From small starters to bigger players.
Exactly. But the real power, especially for retention, is the upgrade-downgrade path. As a customer grows, they move up a tier, great for your revenue. But if they hit a tough spot,
They can downgrade instead of leaving entirely.
right, you keep the customer, keep the logo. Even if the revenue dips temporarily, it keeps them in your world.
Okay, so all these decisions, loyalty efforts, touch models, pricing tiers, it all gets measured by this one big formula, customer lifetime value, CLTV.
Yep. Basically, it's the total net profit or margin you expect to get from a single customer over their entire time with you.
Now, we hear LTV thrown around all the time, but the sources were really clear that the calculation needs something specific, otherwise the number's just wrong or misleading anyway.
Totally. That key nuance is the subscription gross margin. You can't just use revenue.
Why not?
Because revenue doesn't account for your costs to deliver the service and support that customer. Your gross margin does. So the proper formula, sources usually state it as LTV equals cohort annual contract value times your subscription gross margin percentage divided by 1 minus your gross revenue retention rate or your logo churn rate.
Okay, say that again a bit slower. ACV times gross margin percent.
Divided by 1 minus your retention or churn rate. The point is, if you forget that gross margin part, you ignore your ongoing costs. You'll think customers are way more valuable than they actually are.
And make bad spending decisions based on that inflated number.
Precisely. Bad decisions on how much you can afford to spend acquiring them.
Which brings us to the other side of the coin. CAC, customer acquisition cost.
Right. So now we compare the two. What's the customer worth over their lifetime in margin, LTV, versus what did it cost us in sales and marketing to get them, Seiki? That's the CLTV to CAC ratio.
The ultimate health check.
Pretty much. It tells you if your whole growth engine is efficient, if your ratio is 1x.
You spend a dollar to make a dollar back eventually,
Yeah.
broke even, no profit.
Exactly, no profit.
So what's a good ratio? What should you aim for?
Well, the old rule of thumb was always 3x. Make $3 in margin for every $1 spent on acquisition.
But things are changing.
Seems so. Current data suggests that for median SaaS companies, it's actually creeping closer to 3.5x now. It's something you have to watch constantly, especially if you're doing PLG or spending a lot on marketing.
The tricky part seems to be how sensitive that LTV number is. You mentioned it depends on churn or retention.
Hugely sensitive because churn is in the denominator of that LTV formula, right? So even a tiny improvement in churn, maybe from those loyalty programs we talked about, can dramatically increase your LTV.
And a small worsening tanks it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which makes it really hard for early stage companies. If you don't have years of data, accurately calculating LTV is, well, it's tough. Feels like guesswork sometimes.
Which just reinforces why you need to invest in things that reduce churn and boost loyalty.
Absolutely. Lower churn directly boosts LTV, which improves your LTV-SAC ratio. It all connects back. Better loyalty equals better financial health. Hashtag tag outro.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this all together.
Yeah.
What we've seen is that sustainable growth in SaaS really needs alignment across the company.
Right. Yeah, definitely. First, you need your product teams, your customer success teams, focus laser sharp on loyalty, using personalization, maybe smart gamification, whatever it takes to make the product sticky and cut down that voluntary churn.
Go in a second.
Second, sales and marketing leaders have to be super strategic about that touch model. Getting the mix of human interaction and automation right, because that's the biggest lever on your customer acquisition cost.
Got it. And finally, the finance folks.
Right. Finance and strategy teams need discipline. They have to make sure every dollar spent on acquisition is backed by solid unit economics. Always keeping an eye on that margin-adjusted CLTV to CAC ratio, aiming for that 3.5x or better benchmark.
It all has to work together.
It really does. Which leads to maybe a final thought, kind of a puzzle.
Go on.
Well, if your low-touch model relies on the product being super easy and selling itself, and your high-touch model relies on really efficient people doing the selling and supporting.
Okay.
What do you do when your product is actually quite complex? It kind of needs that high-touch help. But your target market, maybe they're developers or small businesses, they expect self-service, they want low-touch.
The mismatch. High-touch need, low-touch expectation.
Exactly. How do you find that perfect scalable blend of human help and automation that lets you support the complexity, keep customers happy, and still justify the price you need to charge?
That tension. Yeah, that sounds like the ongoing challenge, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Nailing that blend.
That's the puzzle for success in this whole recurring revenue world.